You're listening to the In the Money Players Podcast. New show, new theme song. But for those of you missing Willie Nile, just stay tuned. You'll hear him in a bit. You can't stop rock and roll, and you can't stop the Players Podcast. I'll quote the great Mark Twain. A reporter once asked him about rumors that he'd met his untimely demise, and he simply said, "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." So it is with this show. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players Podcast. We're setting the counter all the way back. This is show number 1. I am your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale. I am still in the Brooklyn bunker as we record this on Christmas Eve morning. Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, alongside. For horse players, it's not just Christmas Eve. It's not just Christmas. It's the 3 days in a row, including Boxing Day, a.k.a. Santa Anita opening day. And one of the people for whom that's part of his holiday traditions is with me now. He is the co-host of this show. He was the co-host of a little show I used to do as well. You know him. You love him. He's the people's champion. He started out on Planet Texas, but he's now in Planet Arcadia. He is Jonathon Kinchen. JK, what's up?
PTF, we're back at it. I always like to say back like I stole something. It doesn't make any sense because you wouldn't go back if you stole something. But for whatever reason, my brain always wants to say back like I stole something. And I'm not really sure why, but we are back like we stole something.
There's some window into your psychology in there, above my pay grade, however, above my pay grade. Now, I said that you're on Planet Arcadia, but based on the photograph you just sent me, that is not correct. You haven't made it all the way there yet. Where are you as we speak?
I am in Planet Woodland Hills. I am looking at a mixer, some $70,000 mixer, and my brother's studio at his house in Woodland Hills. There's platinum records on the wall, and when you go into the bathroom, if you need to use the restroom, I'm not joking you. This is not an exaggeration. There's literally 17 keyboards in his bathroom. We're very similar, and you know, tech stuff gets us excited, but he obviously takes it to the next level, and there's a lot of toys in his industry. He has all of them. Music producers, I've been in here with some big music producers, and they come in and they're shocked of how powerful his in-home studio is. So he's got everything you could imagine in here, and all the fun toys, and a bunch of Star Wars memorabilia, a lot of toys, and he's got a stormtrooper over there in the corner, life-size stormtrooper staring at me while I do the show.
How old is your bro, if that's public information?
It's not. It's been deleted from his Wikipedia page.
Okay, never mind.
That's a true story. Here's the thing about it is, I honestly don't know because of that. It's confused me. I think he was like 10, maybe he's 10. He was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 when I was born. 10, I mean, probably maybe 8, 9. I don't know, one of the two. So he's older than me, that's for sure.
I was feeling him in my age bracket with some of the references and just knowing some of the things I know about his career. But and then the Star Wars thing pushed it over the edge. So anyway, I'm just we'll have that conversation privately sometime. All right, we're back on the show. Very exciting to be here. This is obviously a bit of a transitional episode. Apparently, from what I hear, this one may not go up on iTunes for a little while. So we have a new hosting site. People will be able to listen. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you know that. We'll be sending that around. Eventually, we're going to have a setup just like we used to have on iTunes. Just might take a show or two just to get that little bit of programming note out of the way. We're independent now. I don't see that really changing too much. I feel like, I'm just going to be honest. I really do look at the world through the lens of a lot of DRF stuff. That hasn't been a line all these years. Be looking at DRF Formulator quite a bit. Be looking at Timeform US. It does open us up to be a little bit more frank about some of the efforts our friends have going and some of the other information out there. But the only change I think that's going to come over time, I could see the show being a little bit more formalized into segments, because when you have an independent podcast, and now instead of having one sponsor, a patron really, under the old setup, we're going to need sponsors for different segments. So I could see being a little bit more regimented, but I definitely don't want to lose the free-flowing nature of the show, because I think that's part of what's great about podcasts and part about what makes this show fun. We'll have our little production meeting in the middle of the show now. Those aren't going anywhere. Have you given any thought, JK, about ways that you want the show to be the same or ways that you want the show to change?
No, I mean, I think I'll definitely probably still, have the mute button mistakes. I don't think that's going to change. It almost happened there, but I was quick on the draw to get it fixed. No, I actually envisioned it the same way you did without us talking about it. Just having a little bit more, some more segments, some opportunities probably to look to try to do some like sponsored pick fours and maybe some pick 5 carryover, pick 6 carryover things. We can maybe reach out and talk with some people about some opportunities. We've got pretty good relationships with a lot of racetracks and a lot of marketing guys. So I would imagine there'd be an opportunity there. And then, keeping it the same way. And whatever we do, I do know that Pete and I both won't, although some people might not think that's true, we'll prevent ourselves from becoming shills of I don't think we're going to be, doing a Rainbow Six on a random Wednesday saying it's the best bet in the game.
No, you can't. You can't. Even when you have sponsors, and I feel like we lived up to this throughout the DRF era. You can't shill for things that are false. You just lose all credibility. For example, here's a perfect example. All those years, DRF and NTRA were partners. And, my job was largely to promote the NTRA. There's a lot of things I love about the NTRA and the NHC, and I'm happy to talk about how it's the coolest horse player party of the year and something that I believe once you go to once, you're going to want to go to every year. I'm not going to go on there and say for the average player, it's the best value situation in the world, because depending on what kind of player you are, you may find some great value in it, but you may not. And so I don't want to ever come out and say things like perfect example about the Rainbow situation on a non-guaranteed payout day. You can't be out there saying things like that. And but I don't believe we ever did fall into that category. But of course, somebody's always going to accuse you of something. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, it's funny. There's been some I've learned to not respond to the annoying stuff. I mean, unless I have like 3 or 4, then maybe I won't be able to prevent it.
Lots of truth.
But I've had my son pretty much nonstop since we made the transition away from the DRF Players podcast, and so some of the tweets I haven't tied one on yet to have to battle with responding to the tweets. So. And then the other thing is I love it. I joked about it before. Like, dude, you got to have more than 300 followers for me to respond to you. Like, I'm not responding to you and giving you a platform.
Exactly.
When you have 300 followers and it's not really your picture on your
avatar, right?
Avatar. That's the word I was looking for.
Important lesson. It seems like you finally internalized, JK, is not to feed the trolls. But I will also say this. The positive to negative feedback at this point, of the people I've talked to, both publicly and privately, 999 supportive to 1. And if nobody hates you, you're doing something wrong.
Oh, yeah, but here's the thing, Pete. You and I both have, we frequent racetracks. And, I've been to a random restaurant in Austin and someone said something to me about the show. We get so much positive
God bless
stuff
you.
Throughout the year. Yeah, I got the little one he was a sneezing mess last night. But the positive stuff we get throughout the year, and I wasn't really worried about it. Sometimes I like to get into little beefs with people.
Hard to imagine, JK. You're always known to be a diplomat who's quiet and reserved and doesn't get into fistfights at Churchill Downs. I
didn't get into a fist fight.
We'll leave that. We told that story on the old show. You can find it in the archive. Probably the show. I don't know if we got to it the show after the Derby, but maybe one after that. We have all these great questions stored up. I think we should wait on them, though, JK, until we get a little bit more ground under us. I thought it was really important to do a show today, but it is Christmas Eve, so I think we're going to keep this short. Let's talk a little bit about what the show is. I would imagine somebody's going to find us for the first time today and want to check it out. We're still going to be doing 2 shows a week. A Tuesday show typically, obviously this week a little different with the holiday, and sometimes our travel plans will be different. Typically Tuesday and Friday. I think we're going to let the live show slide because I've learned to edit, and once you have that club in your bag, you want to use it. There's just a lot of things. Look, I'm not going to clean up everything. I want to keep the feel of the show. But once you learn to do that, there's just some things that you can make into a more pleasant audio experience for the listener, and that's the direction I want to go. So I think we'll just end up posting at the same time every week. I suppose we could get it if we start recording a little earlier. Let's just tentatively say we're going to try to have shows up and available to listen to by noon on Tuesday and Friday. The Tuesday shows typically are going to be recaps of what's been going on in racing, issues of the day, specific stakes racing recaps, and occasional questions from listeners. That's been great and something we're so grateful to our listeners for, all the great feedback that gets provided, but also very specifically the questions that get asked. Essentially, we let you produce the show on a regular basis. The Friday shows typically will look forward. I think as much as ever or more than ever, maybe we'll try to have some guests in on Friday to specifically help with the prognostication of the races element. Frequently, we'll have guests on Tuesday as well. I think those will be more of the just talk to people about their life variety and general issues in the game, like the recent conversations with Richard Migliori and Barbara Livingston that we posted in the last few weeks. What am I missing? What else do we do on the show?
Talk a lot of strategy stuff. I think it's important, obviously. I think you covered everything, though. I mean, yeah, I think some of the most fun shows that I remember us having are with the guests. You know, some of our we've been very fortunate to you know, being with DRF and then the all the writing that you've done for tournaments to really have some really cool and enlightening guests on to talk about what some of the things that they do. So I think that's one thing that we'll always continue to do, and possibly even be able to branch out a little bit more and do some more things with some more people.
Yes, and tournaments. Somebody asked a very good question about if tournament coverage was still going to be on the docket, and the answer is absolutely. Legitimately view tournaments as being a huge part of the future of the game. We're obviously involved with the World Horse Players Tour. More news on that as it comes down the line. But the idea of having players on to talk about, and also I still think I want to keep a written element. We've got a blog, inthemoneypodcast.com. That's up and running. That might be a good place to continue to have some chats with horse players. And it can be a little bit looser formatted than at DRF, where it really had to follow kind of a strict template. I definitely see more written content happening there. And I also have conceived the idea, but I need some time to think about it a little more. And we'll talk about this one. We'll have a production meeting off air about almost putting together a newsletter connected with this podcast and with that In the Money podcast blog, where we aggregate some of the most interesting stories, podcasts, whatever we're hearing out there in the world under one umbrella. And that could perhaps live on the blog, but also maybe we'll get people to sign up and send that directly to your inbox as well. I would take the lead on that, JK, but is it something you'd be willing to help with?
Pete, I'll help you with anything except for moving. I don't help people move. If you need my help moving, I'll give you $100. You can put that towards getting movers. I think that's the worst thing in the world to ask someone to do is to help you move. I try not to be asked to do it. Fair. I hate it. It's the worst.
Fair. At least you're honest. I'd much rather that than just get a litany of excuses from you. You've got your filling fell out, whatever. You can't help that day. I'd much rather you just be honest about where your boundaries for friendship are. And I'm glad that helping out with the potential newsletter falls on the right side of the line. We could also be looking to loyal listeners. We have so many good listeners out there to be eyes and ears. Let's say we were to do some sort of weekly newsletter or blog that put together the best stuff that had been written that week. I would imagine folks like Gene, our quiz champion, and Drew, who was on the show, and Matt, and people like Eric Bialik. By the way, how terrible was it of us, JK, that we did that Christmas quiz episode and didn't find any love for our friends Eric Bialik and Sean Borman? How did neither of those guys get a call?
Yeah, EB should have got one for sure. Sean could have got one too, but EB for sure. He's been such a math help. He probably deserved some type of call. The question would have been somewhere along the lines of something with helping JK with math.
Save it for next year. I'm already starting to think of more quiz questions. That was a big enough hit, despite the funny circumstances of the show, that I think we will be reviving that concept. So start thinking out there. Start going back and listening to the archive if you want to participate in next year's holiday quiz. Those episodes, by the way, are still up there. You can find them on iTunes in the old DRF feed, and maybe on our blog, I'll put a link where we can find them. Sean Borman, though, did get his revenge on me for not being included in the show. He pointed out a mistake that I made, JK, regarding the show. I described a haberdasher as someone who makes hats. A haberdasher makes men's clothing. A milliner makes hats. So there's a little bit of overlap. Like, I could almost try to claim a little bit of credit in that. A hat, especially the hats I wear, it is an article of men's clothing, but the way I specifically described it on the show, party foul. But the reason I bring all these people up who we're fortunate to have as listeners is I could see them helping point us/me to some really cool content from anywhere out there now in the horse racing world. It could be a discussion on the Thorograph message board, or it could be on the Blood Horse or the TDN or the DRF. And to be able to put the best stuff in one place, that could be really cool. So just an idea I'm kicking the tires on. You can let me know what you think of that if you have an opinion. And if there's one thing I know about our listeners, they have a lot of opinions, JK.
That's for sure. That's why they got themselves involved in this game. It's a game of my opinion is better than yours.
And I made the Twain quote before. That's the one of the best Twain quotes ever. It were not best that we should all think alike. It is difference of opinion that makes horse races. And with that in mind, we're going to pivot to talk about opening day at Santa Anita, a stakes-studded card, and it all kicks off, JK, with race number 4. What are you thinking here?
Look, this is one of my favorite days of the year. It's always a lot of fun. There's always some fun maidens. I remember the Factor broke his maiden at Santa Anita opening day one time when I was out here. The maiden races here are always fun. The stakes races are always fun. The Malibu, one of my favorite races all year. The first race, I think the stake is in race 4. It's not going to be connected to the pick 6. However, the early pick 5, which is always a staple out in Southern California. There's a horse on the rail, Amandine, for Jeff Mullins. It ran pretty well last time. Had a little bit of a setup. I'm going to go with the more forward type, and that's the 3, Miss Bad Behavior. I thought she ran really well last time. Gets Joel Rosario, the switch from Bejarano to Joel Rosario. She's never not been in the exacta. It's Santa Anita. She's run there 6 times. She's won twice, ran second 4 times. I think she'll get her trip. She'll be there when they turn for home. And as long as the pace doesn't get too quick, I think she'll be able to finish. If you're looking for a little bit more of a price, take a look at the 6 XS Gold for Jim Cassidy. Kent DeSormo rode the horse last time down at Del Mar. Ran really pretty well in that spot. Was won by 4 lengths, kind of swooped the field. I think that one could come running late if it quickens up a little bit. But the 3, Miss Bad Behavior, is the one that I'd want to build around. I wouldn't completely fade the 1 horse down the inside for Jeff Mullins, but from a selection standpoint, I'm going to go with the 3 horse Miss Bad Behavior.
The 5th is a maiden race. You have any quick thoughts about this one? I don't want to hold your feet to the fire if you haven't thoroughly looked yet.
we talk about it. The DRF is going to have a workout report. It's actually already up. I got a peek at that one. I myself have always preferred the Andy Harrington clocker report. He's there. He's been there. He's been doing it for a long time. I like to look at both of them. I prefer to have both. If I was going to have to pick one, it would be the Andy Harrington one. But I like to look at both. They both provide good information. So Andy's workout report doesn't come out till like 9 o'clock Eastern the night before the races. So you'll have to check that out on Christmas night. But one of the horses that I've been following, the horse ran really well at Los Al in the slop. Really well. I mean, ran well enough, was supposed to run really well, was Mo Mississippi for Peter Urton. I'm gonna lean back on that horse here. Obviously, we got to see what the Baffert workout reports are going to be on All Good, who's a half to Plum Pretty, who won the Kentucky Oaks, and then Scalper for Speedway. Speedway is that stable that I believe had collected. So they've got a good thing going with Bob Baffert. Scalper could be the real deal. Baffert always saves one for opening day, a real talented, freaky one. And so that's the only concern I have with Mo Mississippi.
All right. I should have given you a shout out. Very fun thing about the last show that we did, the final show on the DRF feed. Claps to you for going out a winner. I mean, an 8-5 shot, but hey, to me, an 8-5 shot that wins like a 1-5 shot actually represents pretty great value. Were you able to make any hay with that in real life?
7-2 morning line, so it wasn't too Kinchen chalky. Here's the thing. So we're supposed to be flying all day Saturday. I won't bore you with the whole traveling woes. Long story short, my dad had a confirmed ticket. He didn't want to fly alone. Me and Austin were standby, so we had to try to pair him up with us so we could get on the same flight. Our flights were all disasters. We ended up scrapping the whole thing on Saturday, so I went and hung out with a bunch of high school friends, and I wasn't on my phone, and I just wasn't paying attention. And one of my friends who knows I'm involved in racing said, "Do you have any good bets today?" And I said, "I do." And I opened up my phone, and they were crossing the wire. I'm dead serious. It's exactly how it happened. And I was like, oh, geez, here we go.
That's gross.
I did not get involved.
Hopefully some listeners did. And in any case, I thought that was nice. I know when Dave Litvin left DRF, I remember noticing that his pick went out a winner. And I noted that. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the show, but I certainly noted it in my mind. Guy who, he was there for a long time, did such a great job, such a great handicapper, and somebody who I've learned so much from over the years. In fact, we should have him on the show at some point soon. And I remember thinking how cool that was that he went out a winner. Glad to see that you, but I'll ride the coattails on this one, followed in the old footsteps. Okay, JK, let's move on to the Grade 1 La Brea, one of the traditional featured races on Santa Anita opening day. It goes as the 6th race, 2:15 local time. What'd you come up with?
I really like Tom Lute. I really like Phoenix Thoroughbreds. I really like Bob Baffert, and I don't mind Drayden Van Dyke at all. I don't know him personally, but I like him. I've never liked Dream Tree. I've always tried to beat her. She ran much better in the prior race than I ever expected she was going to run. I always had this idea that I was going to keep trying to beat her because she was undefeated. I'm going to keep trying to beat her. She's going to be bet off the board. She's obviously a very likely winner here, but I'm going to go with the 3, Kelly's Humor. Blinkers on, the switch to Peter Miller. That horse has kind of been against the track the last few times, not really where you want it to be. I think she'll come running late, and Happy Like a Fool is the reason that I feel so comfortable with Kelly's Humor. Happy Like a Fool is one of those quick Wesley Ward types, obviously can get out of the gate well, has some nice early speed. She drew the rail. She's got really only one way to go. I think she should cook things up a little bit and make them run a little bit quicker. And I'm hoping that it falls apart going 7 with a lot of these fillies coming in, with different distance situations in their previous. And I'm going to go with the 3, Kelly's Humor, 8-1 on the morning line. I'm against Embolden. If you look at the DRF workout report, not working well. Baffert horses don't work bad and run well. It just doesn't happen. That can happen in other barns. You can see that C+, they'll run through it. Cheeky barns especially. But Bob Baffert's barn, it doesn't happen. If they work bad, they run bad. And it makes a ton of sense why this filly shows up here. Obviously, she's well-bred. She's a Godolphin type, getting her a Grade 1. And this could, obviously in this race would be very, very important. So she shows up here anyways. I'm going to go with the 3, Kelly's Humor.
Lots of good information there. For a second, I thought you were trying to solicit our first sponsor with the Phoenix Thoroughbred plug there, JK.
Man, as much money as they spend at the sales, they could throw us a couple of dollars, couldn't they?
Let's move on to the Mathis Brothers Mile, JK. How are we going to keep the good times rolling on Santa Anita opening day?
I'm going to hop on this son of Frankel for Todd Pletcher and John Velasquez and Guido. That horse obviously possesses a ton of speed. And is talented. Ran well enough throughout his career so far. Usually at a little bit shorter, but obviously the flat mile on the nice. I'm imagining that turf course is going to look like a putting green out there. No one's been on it for a long time. The rail will be down. I think Guido could be loose in here. Now look, he's probably not going to be much value. He'll probably be 7-2, 5-2, and then River Boyne will take a bunch of money. River Boyne is without a doubt the most likely winner. River Boyne is the most talented, the most consistent. You look at all the ones in his PPs from winning races. He got beat last time by Christina Helmer's Raging Bull, but River Boyne is is obviously the most likely winner. But I'm going to go with Guido a little bit, and then the kind of interesting horse that I think I would try to hook up underneath, or if you feel for some reason that it could possibly fall apart. I think Combatant is interesting. Now the horses, ran well last time at Zia Park. Ran a nice figure that day. Has ran well enough. He ran well enough at Saratoga and the Better Talk Now, where he ran fourth, beating a length. It's that East Coast, not really an East Coast turf horse, but he's an East Coast horse who's run on the turf and run well enough on the turf, and now he shows up here. Obviously trained by Steve Asmussen. You get Jose Ortiz. I think Combatant's a little bit interesting. He's a son of Scat Daddy, and we know what they'll do on the green stuff.
Oh, yeah. Lots of Royal Ascot form represented here, actually, on opening day. You mentioned Happy Like a Fool in the last and Guido in here. And then, of course, from a breeding standpoint, Scat Daddy makes you think of Ascot as well. Pretty interesting stuff, JK. Let's move on to race 8, the San Antonio, as we head on to, it's the start of the late pick 3, but it's one of the final 2 races that we'll be talking about.
The 2 and the 3, Battle of Midway at Dabster. Obviously, they were head and head there, and the Native Diver as they turned for home and battled all the way through there. And those 2 horses are probably the most likely winners. They have the fastest figures. They've been the most accomplished. They ran well in the last race. They're coming from the big connections with Hollendorfer and Baffert. They're going to get bet. I'm going to try to get cute with this Tatters to Riches. That horse won on debut at Del Mar back in the day. Obviously has had some issues throughout. And now he shows up here, blinkers on, and trying the mile and a 16th, the farthest he's ever run, won a mile a couple times. The horse is extremely talented. I think the horse presents a lot of value because I think he'll be ignored compared to the other 2. And so I'm going to try to hook up Tatters and Riches in here.
Okay. No love for gift box in the spot?
No, the workout report wasn't great. And I don't think that betting horses off of Chad Brown is necessarily a remedy for success. If there was something that could be done, Chad would probably have figured it out with him. There's no offense to John Sadler, who obviously cost me a lot of money in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but I just, and then the workout report that I've seen so far, the DRF workout report, it isn't loving how gift box is going. So that's another reason to check out the other workout reports that are available to kind of compare. It's obviously an opinion-based report. So, let's see what the other ones say. But no, not so much gift box for me. I think one of those 2 favorites will be probably the most likely winners, but I think Tatters to Riches probably presents the most value.
Makes sense. Let's go on to the Malibu, the day's other grade 1, 7 furlongs, race 9, 4 p.m. Pacific. What are your thoughts?
I had to bring an extra bag. I checked the bag for the first time because I needed to make sure that this time when I came out to California, I had my silver wig. It has its own little case, little traveling case. So I wanted to make sure I had it. It's like a Chad Brown turf race. You got 4 Bafferts entered in here. I only want 2 of them, and that's McKenzie. Interesting, the cut back. He stretched and but he ran one of his best numbers he ever ran was his debut when he went when he was going 7. So the 7's not going to be an issue for him. For these talented types, I think that he could be extremely dangerous. He's going to probably be the favorite. He'll be a very short price. Drawn outside, Mike Smith should be able to do whatever he needs to do with McKenzie. But let's not forget how good Axeman was for a small period of time. Obviously, things went the wrong direction with him. He had a little bit of a break. I think he's back now. He's got a ton of speed. I think the 7 could be right for him as well. Those are the only 2 I want. The workout report so far seems to like Axeman a little bit. We'll see what the other ones say. McKenzie's always going to probably be having nice workouts. He's just a talented horse who went off. I believe if he wasn't favored, he was very close to being favored in the Breeders' Cup Classic off of his performance in the Pennsylvania Derby. Those are the only 2 that I want. I think a lot of people might fall for the Nero thing. He's too much of a kooky guy for me. I won't make fun of you, Pete, if you pick 7 Trumpets, and I'll be rooting for Axel. I'll be rooting for Axelrod. I feel like he wants further, but I don't have any reason to believe that that I know that that's true. But I think that he could present a little bit of value. And there's one more I'll just say, and I don't mind throwing out another horse. I've said like 4 horses' names, but I'm obviously just using Axeman and McKenzie as my main presses here. But Still Having Fun ran a huge race in the Woody Stevens. And let's not forget that. If this thing finds a way to fall apart, this is a horse that can close a little bit. You get Kent DeSormo, kind of the trip. You could see Kent, blowing up everybody's pick 6, come running late on the outside and snapping McKenzie and Axeman in the lane. Still Having Fun could be ignored on the West Coast, and he could be a little bit of a good price.
I do like 7 Trumpets again here. I haven't fully done the work on this, obviously, why I'm letting you talk the whole time today about these picks. But this is a horse who I'm basically have the proverbial contract with at this point based on some of the prior efforts. And, a win might be out of reach, but very interesting vertical underneath key. Couple of questions for you about Axeman. The first, the fact that he's a first-time gelding, how much does that add to his appeal to you?
Yeah, it's not funny. You don't really see Baffert. He's got such expensive horses. It's not a thing that you see very often for him. So, it's probably suggests that whatever was going wrong with him had to do with something that relating to the man parts,
the mind or the man parts, one or the other.
I guess you should call them the colt parts, huh? Or the horse part, the colt parts. But from all accounts, working well now. Talented horse, talented horse that really made a lot of noise. Remember, he ran on the undercard in front of Justify and ran a huge figure. Ran really good that day, blew those horses away. So. It's definitely. I wouldn't take it as a negative. I would take it as a positive. I would take it as that narrative builder we talk about when you start at the bottom of the PPs. He runs the big number, then he gets thrown into stakes company and kind of doesn't run well. Gets a break, comes back, wins, and then goes sour. Gets a long break, comes back with no man parts, and now you think that that's the reason that the break had to happen. And hopefully those issues have been resolved. And according to the workouts, he's traveling in the right direction.
Now you can be honest and admit that the real reason you like Axeman is those silks with the longhorn right on there.
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. It definitely doesn't hurt one bit. And I will say this is one of those moments where you get some. It's not truth. I mean, we've hinted at it a long time. We've just never said it out loud. So if you weren't picking up the clues, now you can get it. Go to XBTV and watch Axeman work and learn more about what it is that you're looking at when it comes to horse flesh. If they're working in company, it's really easy to get an idea of what's going on with a horse. It's harder when they're by themselves if you don't know what you're looking at. But if they're in company, you just look at the jockey's hands, and XBTV does a great job with a lot of their videos of showing these workouts. And I think that I would imagine that they'll have some of Axeman's last few works, so you can put your eyes on them rather than just looking at the numbers on the bottom of the PPs or the words that someone else wrote in a workout report.
I'm glad you mentioned XBTV because I did have on my list of things to talk about. Probably the last thing we'll talk about as time is ticking on this Christmas Eve. The changes at Santa Anita. I'm going to start off with the positive, which is it is going to be great to get to watch our pal, Frank Miramati, fulfill his dream of being the Santa Anita track announcer for this meet. That is absolutely fantastic. In my view, I'm somebody I think who typically will hold two thoughts in their head at the same time more than some. I think that's something that I have a decent amount of skill when it comes to that. But it's also okay to feel bad for Michael Rona and the way that all went down. We never talked about it on the show just because we've been so busy with other things. That wasn't by design. Some of the changes there do seem less than positive and make you wonder what's going on, especially on the XPTV side. But it is what it is, and it doesn't prevent me from being very happy for Frank. How cool is it going to be? Will you go visit him? Will you watch a race in the booth with him on opening day or when he has an opportunity during your visit to California?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Frank is, let me back up. I loved Michael Rona. I thought he did a great job. I think that he was always very nice to us. He would always come down to the Logan after calling races, and
great
him and his
guest on the
wife
show,
they were great. He was great. I was almost, to a certain point, I almost kind of giggled at one of the lines in the press release about wanting someone to interact with the fans. Obviously, Frank's going to be great at that. I'm going to praise him in a couple seconds. But Michael did that. He made my mom feel great one time. He just talked to my mom for 15, 20 minutes, and she just thought he was the greatest thing in the world. Now, I will say that, and I will say this. I was at Monmouth Park at the beginning of Frank and I's relationship, and I texted him asking for pizza advice, and he said, "Don't do anything. Send me your address." And he got the pizza and had it delivered to the hotel I was staying at. Frank's an amazing man. He's unbelievably funny. He's encouraging. He's great. He'll do great in that job, and I'm very, very happy for him. But I agree with you. Sorry that someone had to be on the bad end of that, and I'm really sorry that it had to be someone that I like and admire, and Michael Rona.
Right, after especially what they went through. I mean, it really was always a question, the question being who should be the Santa Anita track announcer, that had two right answers, right? But after that whole audition, which must have been very taxing, just doesn't feel great. But, there have been changes at higher levels at Santa Anita, and people responsible for that presumably aren't there now. And anyway, it's a bit of a mess. It needed to be acknowledged on the show. Do you have another quick thought on it?
Two things. I'll say one thing, and then I'll pivot to one more thing. So what happened, just so people that don't know, is the management changed. The manager that made the decision about Frank and Michael is not there anymore. And so that decision was made. And that's why it seems so weird. But that's why they had the competition. There was a decision made, and then this happened. It's the change in management, which happens at Stronach from time to time. I will say this. I've seen a lot of people bashing this roulette bet. Essentially what it is they're gonna pool horses as red. They're gonna pool a couple horses as black and some long shots as green. And so a novice or new player can come in and just pick red, black, or green and play like that, where they only have three options. A lot of people think that it's not good. I've heard a lot of people talk about it not being good. I actually think it's great. And let me tell you why I think it's great. It's because, no, it is not the answer that saved racing, but it is the answer that is less intimidating for a new player. It is less defeating for a new player, and it keeps that new player coming back. I don't care if new guy puts 100 in the win pool so I get better odds. I don't care about that. I want new guy to have a good time and turn into the guy that puts $1,000 in the win pool. In our game, the entry to our game is so complicated that we don't hook the $100 guy and turn them into $1,000 guy. And I think that bets like this can hook $100 guy and turn him into $1,000 guy. If there's a new game in Vegas and you walk by it and you put $100 down and you lose your 130 seconds, you're not coming back. But if you go to the game and you play for 3 hours, you get a bunch of free drinks, you sit next to a pretty girl, suddenly you're back the next day playing that game. And that's how I feel about this roulette thing. It's not the answer, but it's something to keep people playing. And then they learn and they love, and then they come back, and then they start reading books and playing pick fours, and now we can take their money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why people get so upset about innovation like this.
You make some great points, and I'm in the camp of holding out judgment. Steve Bick and I talked about this on At the Race, as he, like many do, was cynical, and I understand some of the cynicism. But for me, the key thing here is if it can be that experience that you're describing, great. I worry that if these are small pools that computer betting players have access to, if there ever was any value in it, you're going to see it just like quickly drained. And it's not the value that really bothers me. It's the price changing. I feel like if you want to market to your customer, your $100 customer, JK, you need fixed odds for something like this. I just think it anti-markets us between our already high takeout and then those odds changes. I just feel like it could be doomed from that point of view of like, I just think it's going to be so hard to talk to sports betting types and say to them, oh, when you're getting even money on this proposition. Wait a second, it's 1-2, and that makes
a ton of sense. You're 100% right about that. That's not going to be good.
And so, I mean, if you could somehow do this bet as super low takeout, as fixed odds, if you could make that happen, maybe you don't let CRWs play in this pool. I mean, that's another possibility if you just keep it really small. But I mean, the fact is, if the pools are going to be so small that the odds changes, I just think it might be a problem. It's something to look out for. I do believe there are technological solutions out there. Of course, it seems unlikely given some of the resistance we've seen to updating the tote system that it's going to happen over this. But anyway, that's my sort of counter argument. But I'm absolutely okay seeing what happens and withholding judgment for a bit.
I think that we've uncovered a thing that we'll talk about throughout the show is that it probably is coming. It's probably an incomplete thought, right? Like it's probably like it's I think it's barking up the right tree, but there's probably a lot of holes that I'm going to predict that they didn't fill, and keeping it from being a problem and keeping it to be as positive as it can be. The other thing is like, who's doing the pairings and why and how are they doing them? Are they making them fun and interesting and dynamic? Or are they just kind of, that's going to matter as well too, I think, with the pairings of the groupings of the red, black, and green.
All right, it'll be interesting to see. We'll talk about that more, but we are over time, my friend, on this very first edition of the In the Money Players Podcast. I want to thank you, JK, for taking time away from your family during this time of year, especially. You have you have done me a real solid here, helping out, keeping things moving seamlessly, and I very much appreciate that. I also want to thank somebody who I reached out to, hadn't talked to in a while, and was able to help out with the logistics of this show. He's a man who never plays the full. Producer DJ Unstable, thank you very much, DJ. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for listening, especially all of you who checked out our last show and then came right back for this show. Very much appreciate the support. Keep it coming. We're going to keep posting. You're going to keep listening. It's going to be a lot of fun. Check us out also inthemoneypodcast.com. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. We will be back on Friday. Hey, one more thing for you, JK. You said you'd do anything but help me move. Will you help me fill out my Eclipse ballot on the next show?
Absolutely. I have the paperwork, ironically, in my bag. I'm ready to go.
I love it. We will get that taken care of. We'll be back later in the week. May you win all your photos.
Come on, love.